discoursing around family. Zach Boyd back at it again. Current events, coaching carousel, plethora of different topics to talk about. And as always, this podcast is sponsored by WagerWire. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to go out there and check them out, you can check in. You can place live bets. You can cash out before the buzzer goes off. You can trade bets. They're also going to be looking out for that app coming in around 1 year. Go ahead and get your name in line, as well as going to www.wagerwire.com, www.wagerwire.com, and get your bets in for the Super Bowl. And to join us to talk about all of these different coaching carousel, and I don't even know what the heck's going on at this point. I thought it'd be nice to have George Bremer to hop in and just kind of get your thoughts. How you been, George?
Doing well. How are you?
Hey, we're doing great. I think we're just I speak for all of Colts Nation. We're just kind of in limbo with this coaching search. I think the latest is Saturday. Shane Steichen, I believe the Colts are going down his way to interview him, if that's correct. What you got on Shane Steichen?
Yeah, they're going to go out there Saturday, sending a contingent, as Albert Breer said, out there. So you figure that's going to be Jim Irsay, Chris Ballard. I would imagine Carly Irsay-Gordon's going to be part of that group. We'll see who else is in there. Maybe Ed Dodds. Maybe you've got somebody like Ryan Decker, who would be a part of that. But, yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the end of this round of interviews, and they can either, on Sunday whittle it down to maybe a group of 2 or 3 that they can make the third round and the finalist, if you will. Or, maybe they're ready to pick someone and make an offer after this. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on this side of things. I think with Steichen, to me, the big selling point for him is just the job that Philadelphia has done building that offense around Jalen Hurts, making it, fit to his strengths, not trying to fit him into whatever they want to do. And I think as you're looking at a team in Indianapolis who's likely to have a rookie quarterback next year, no matter which of those rookies you want to put under, you would like the idea that your head coach has experience in building an offense that's maybe not traditional, that just works to highlight what they do best.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. George, are you a little bit surprised at just the extensiveness that we've went through as far as, bringing all these guys in and then bringing them back in for in-person visits? I know we said we were going to cast a wide net. This net's been pretty damn wide, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I am a little surprised. The 13 is a big number to begin with for the initial candidates, and then 8 that we know of that came back for finalist interviews. And I say that we know of because, 2 of those initial 13 we wouldn't know about if the team hadn't tweeted out that they had interviewed them. So it's possible that there's been 1 or more other interviews in the second round that we're not aware of. They haven't tweeted any of those out. So I don't want to just assume that didn't happen. I mean, it is in keeping with what Chris Ballard said 2 days after the season ended, that this was going to be a process that might last, into mid-February, and that they were going to be thorough. They've certainly been thorough. If nothing else, they have certainly been thorough. It'll be interesting to see. As far as I know, it's unprecedented to go to a third round of interviews. It'll be interesting to see if that happens.
Yeah, and just want to clear this up for the listeners, George. I believe I'm right in saying this. If they don't make a decision with Shane Steichen, or for that matter, any coach that's still currently coaching, we got to wait till after the Super Bowl to make a decision on that. Am I right by saying that?
To make it official, yeah. I mean, they could make a decision internally and say they're going to hire Shane Steichen or anybody else who's in the Super Bowl right now, but they can't hire them. They can't sign a contract until the day after the Super Bowl, which, that might be a factor with this team. I seem to remember that being something that caused a little trouble around here 5 years ago.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when it comes to that. Question for you. We've went through so many people. Have there been a couple people for you, George, that have at the very least just piqued your interest and you thought, that's an interesting name. I might like to see what that looks like in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think you can make a case for all 8 of these guys, and I think you can make a case against all 8 of these guys, honestly. I mean, I think every one of them has something about them and their past or their personality that makes you think that could be an interesting fit here. And every one of them has some kind of liability that makes you wonder, would they be the right fit? Which I think is part of what is taking so long. I don't know that. I don't know if you can sit down and just pick out of these 8 guys one or two that are head and shoulders above everybody else. I think that's why the process is going the way it's gone. I have heard, for what it's worth, which is not much because there's been so little. We've talked about this off the air. There's been so little information coming out of this building during this search. But I have heard good things, that the interview went well with Raheem Morris, with Brian Callahan, with Shane Steichen, and with Wink Martindale. So are those the 4 guys? Also Rich Bisaccia. So 5 guys that I've heard that, they impressed when they were in here. Are those the finalists, quote unquote? I don't know. It's hard to say. But I do think part of this whole thing is that you can legitimately look at all 8 of these guys and find a reason they should be the head coach and find a reason they should not be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think a week ago, George, it was kind of crazy how Colts Nation has kind of gravitated to different narratives and storylines. Last week, everyone was at this point was trying to get people to sign a petition to not bring Jeff Saturday back as the head coach, and now everybody's up in arms about how long it's taken to hire, just anybody in here. Doesn't sound like to me that Jeff Saturday is at the head of that table. Just from what you're hearing, and I know that, everything changes day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. Are you kind of along the same thought process that Jeff Saturday is probably not going to be in that top consideration for the head coach of this football team?
Yeah, I mean, right now that seems to be the way the wind's blowing. That he's not the front runner to the extent that there is a single front runner. I'll never rule him out just because we know that the number one fan, for him is the guy in charge here. So there's always going to be a possibility. But I think right now it doesn't seem like, that the wind's blowing in that direction.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's unbelievable to just think that we've went through this process. It'd just be hard for me to believe, George, that Jeff Saturday would be the one who stood above all of the others. There's been a lot of conversation when it comes to, bringing these guys in, that Ballard wants them to potentially, stick with the defensive group that we already have in place. Have you heard anything about that as far as that goes? Or do you think that he's going to give, the new coach the full autonomy to go ahead and put his staff together the way that he would like?
I think, ultimately the coach will have that autonomy. I mean, even Frank Reich, when he came in, wasn't saddled with Matt Eberflus. All that Chris Ballard asked of him was that they sit down and have a conversation, and he not make a decision until he had met with Matt. It wasn't. I think there's a sense out there that it was sort of, forced upon him, and it wasn't. It was okay. He's here, and we made some promises to him, so please don't just, write him off without even having a conversation. And I think it'll be similar this time around. I think if somebody came in, just throwing names out there, if somebody like Raheem Morris were to get the job and he felt really strongly that Ejiro Evero needed to be his defensive coordinator, I don't think that Ballard would stand in the way of that. But I do think, that they like what Gus Bradley did. They like what this staff did. And that the new head coach will probably be at least encouraged to sit down and talk with Gus and make him a real consideration for the job.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You definitely got to think Bubba Ventrone would be a guy that you would want to keep in the building. I mean, he's been a damn good job of a special teams coordinator and be a nice get for anybody coming in as well. Brian Callahan, as we circle back, he came in this week. We interviewed. Looks like he's going out to Arizona to interview as well. George, if you're Brian Callahan, does it put a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth that a team's willing to let you go talk to another team? If you're saying, hey, well, I've got one team who was okay with me going to speak with another team, and I got another team I'm in their building, and they're potentially offering me the job. Would that put a bad taste in Brian Callahan's mouth, in your opinion?
I would. I mean, I can't speak for him because I've never really dealt with him, so I don't know what his personality is or, the way he approaches these things. But just on a personal level, I just be excited that there's multiple teams that want my services. I don't think it would affect me much, especially when you see the way that the Colts have kind of handled this, and you can tell that they're being very deliberate and being very thorough. I don't think I would read that as any kind of you know bad reading on one guy or another. I think it's just them saying, look, we're going to take our time, we're going to get the right guy. Now, the biggest, I've said this on a couple shows already. I think the biggest thing about this that's so hard to gauge is the most important element of this entire process are the interviews. And we have no idea what's being said in those rooms. We have no idea how, the candidates feel about the franchises. I think that's the bigger element here. If he got some kind of a feeling that made him uncomfortable when he talked with the Colts, then I don't think he would take the second interview to begin with. So, I don't think it should be a factor in this, but it's always hard to say, because I think if you talk to 90 coaches, probably you're going to get 90 different answers.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right when it comes down to it. I mean, it's just an honor to get to this point if you're Brian Callahan. And I don't know, maybe you go to a better situation. Maybe you hold out for the Colts if that's the one that you prefer. We'll have to see how that goes. As far as you mentioned Wink Martindale a second ago. This guy has kind of a unique personality type, and I can see where you get this guy in a room. He's a likable guy, and a lot of people have likened him to Bruce Arians in the past. Kind of has that demeanor about him. What do you know about Wink Martindale? And he kind of was just a out of left field fast riser, and it seems like there's at least a real interest in at least talking to him.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. There's a real interest there, and I think the Bruce Arians comparison is a good one. He's obviously on the other side of the ball, but I think he's one of those guys that's kind of known for being straight shooter, for not holding much back, and you gotta feel like that is going to go a long way with Chris Ballard. That's sort of his MO, and I think a guy like that is always going to get on Ballard's radar. It'll be interesting to see. I think there's reasons to be a little more hesitant with the defensive guys that I think are real. Chief among them, the idea that even if you nail your offensive coordinator hire, you could keep him for maybe a year or two, and then he's going to be somewhere else, and you're going to have to restart that process all over again. But I don't think they should be a disqualifying thing. I think there's pluses and minuses to any head coach that you bring in, and I think what the Colts are looking for, I get the feeling at least, what the Colts are looking for is sort of that Mike Vrabel type. They want a tough guy, a guy that's going to bring in a lot of accountability and be a leader of men. You've heard those things a lot said, by the guys who run this show. And I think Wink Martindale checks a lot of those boxes.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up Mike Vrabel. And I've said on the last few podcasts, I think, but actually I know, I don't just think, Chris Ballard really regrets kind of handling that coaching search that first go around that way. He mentioned that he had already predetermined that, Josh McDaniels was his guy, and he had Mike Vrabel in that building, and he really liked Mike Vrabel, and he was just kind of a little bit hesitant to pull the plug on a guy who hadn't had head coaching experience. Doesn't seem like he's going to hold that against this group that's coming in when it comes down to it. If it's a coin flip, George, I've said in the past, we've said this, off the podcast as well. I like an offensive-minded coach for what you mentioned earlier. You don't have that consistent turnover. If you're going to have a young quarterback, in a perfect world, you find the right offensive-minded coach, and they're probably married together if things work out for the next 10 or 12 years. Are you kind of on that side, or are you just on the side of the fence? You say, you know what? We just have to get the right guy, and everything else will just kind of fall in place and work its way out.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you just have to get the right guy, because, I look at like Sean McDermott up in Buffalo, and it doesn't seem like he's hurt the development of Josh Allen in any way. And I know the Bills haven't gone, all the way to the promised land yet, but I think the Colts will be really happy with the time that McDermott has been in Buffalo. If you put that success in Indy, I think the Colts will be really happy with that for the next 4 or 5 years or whatever period that would be. But I agree with you. I think all other things being equal, I would still lean towards the offensive guy because you do want to kind of marry that head coach with the young quarterback, let them grow together. And when you look at the situations that have been the best long term, the teams like the Chiefs who have gone to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, New England and that 2 decade run that they had, it's usually one head coach and one quarterback that are pushing that. Even the Colts, the last time they were here, the best of that run, Peyton Manning had multiple people around him, but the best of that Glory Day run was with Tony Dungy and then Jim Caldwell, who was Tony Dungy's handpicked successor, and you had still Tom Moore here running the offense. I think that kind of stability has been proven to be, what sort of the secret sauce for long-term success in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. Before we let you off here, George, not going to hold you to it, but are there just a couple guys you're either A, rooting for, or you're hearing that, hey, I think there's a real possibility if there's a final round or whatever you want to call it, final round in the final decision-making process? Are there a couple guys that you've heard their name? And I know West 56, man. I mean, I've heard it is just tight-lipped over there. There's not really anything coming out of there. But just from what little intel you've got, are there a couple guys that you think Colts Nation should be looking at and as a possibility as being the next head coach?
Yeah, Raheem Morris's name has been so consistent through this process that I think that it's hard to ignore that. I think he's a guy who you've got to keep an eye on. I think if there is a third round, I'd be really surprised if he wasn't part of that. I think Shane Steichen, just the fact that they waited and got all the way to Saturday to go do that interview, that alone tells me there's some strong interest, because you could have just said, all right, we're going to go with the 7 we did and cut that interview out. So I really think that that's a sign that he's a big part of this. I've heard that Rich Bisaccia was very impressive, and he's another guy that I think, similar to Martindale, has that sort of plain talker, high accountability that you would think would do well with Chris Ballard. And then, I think Brian Callahan's connection to Peyton Manning, his quarterback history, I think that's going to keep him in the mix as well. So it's, that's 4 guys right there. And didn't even throw in Wink Martindale. So I think it gives you an idea of how wide open this is and why there might be a third round of interviews.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Should be interesting. More to come on that, guys. If you haven't had a chance, like, rate, review, share, and subscribe. Join this No Horsing Around family as we bring you constant, continuous content as often as we can. And we're going to try to stay on top of this Colts coaching carousel. And eventually, stick with us. I promise you we will have a head coach. I don't know when that will be, but we will eventually have a head coach. And George, just want to take a quick second, man, and thank you for hopping on here. As always, we love having you around, and we'll stay plugged into what you are writing and what you're doing down the road.
Yeah, man, no problem. Anytime. It's always a pleasure. And certainly this offseason has given us plenty to talk about.
Hey, no doubt about it. Guys, until next time, Zach Boyd, and we're out.